The Runes League just finished yesterday in Bologna. 340 people played in the first European best of 3 Spiritforged event, and I'm just gonna go through the top 16 deck lists that I find interesting. Entire event was won by Declemente. Big congrats to him. He's the winner of the first Spiritforged event in Europe, and he played a Draven. And if you watched my video from last week about the Chinese metagame, you will recognize what inspired him, but what changes also he made to this deck, because the entirety of the engine is exactly the same as we have seen in the Chinese version of this deck. So essentially, Cold Shot, Seal of Discord, Stack Deck, Scrap Heap, Traveling Merchant, Ezreal, Battering Ram, and Raza, all of those cards, and of course the one last rides, are the essential engine of this deck. You top it all, of course, with Treasure Hunters, because that's one of the best 2-drops in the game, and the Fight of Flights and Rebukes. But what is being changed here by Declemente, and I think that makes the deck much better, he cuts the Nocturnes, which are creating a very inconsistent experience when it comes to the Chinese version of this deck, and puts in Fizzes in the main and one Vi. But also, there's a one copy of Bushwhack, which I think almost everyone who made videos when it comes to prediction value of this card put it at absolutely unplayable. But here, it is playable. I don't think it was played from the hidden, but it allows you to play those creatures, all of the creatures that you play in that turn, ready. So now when you think about it, you can play multiple Razas, a Vi from hand, and they enter ready, and you just get the final points. So no Ride the Wind, but Bushwhack instead. Now, is that genius or not? I think it's pretty neat. Now, when it comes to locations, we have standard stuff here. We have Zone Warrens, which is complemental to complements the entire idea of the deck, because more discard, more draw just allows you to go through the deck faster. We have the Minefield, which fuels Razas better, and also the Fizzes, right? Remember, in main we have 2 Fizzes here, so you gain more consistency as well with Fizz if you have Minefield or Zone Warrens. And then the third location is the Peak. What is very important to understand here as well is that the Peak is probably the least neutral for almost any deck here. So like your opponent might also gain a little bit value with the target's Peak, but this is very neat addition to this deck when specifically you also side in the hard bargains, because hard bargains allow, you know, when you untap 2, it allows you to threaten that counter almost always. In the sideboard, you're gonna see also the additional copy of Falling Star if you need it. There's so many matchups where Falling Star is just beautiful. The switcheroos are incredibly powerful. I wouldn't be surprised to see switcheroos in the main even for this deck in the future. Who knows? It just allows for some really disgusting combat tricks. And we have 2 Brain here in this side to bring into other Dravens, other Annies, essentially anything that has purple. Brain here is fantastic in those matchups. Big congrats to Declemente. This is a big win. 340 players is a really big tournament, so it's an incredibly big feat. And also, if I'm not mistaken, he breezed through the tournament by only losing to 1 deck, and if I remember correctly, that was a Victor. Second place is Zorzi, the finalist. He is playing a more traditional Draven with spinning axes, because the other version doesn't play any spinning axes. The Chinese version was playing the hidden capes as well, but that's about it. The only other equipment is basically 1 shovel, which, by the way, this Draven also has in the sideboard, but I digress. Anyway, this is a more traditional Draven. The curious thing to note is the hard bargain in the main, which I like, because not many people think that Draven will play hard bargain in the main, so playing it in the main is even more surprising for most people. There's 1 Brewing here in the main, which I feel like could probably be 2 instead of the Ferris, because Ferris is so weak against any purple deck, but at the same time Ferris is just so good against anything else, so it's kind of understandable. Not much to say about this deck apart from the fact that it's just a normal traditional Draven, and there are some tricks in the sideboard, like an additional copy of the Rebuke, so not 3 main. There are 2 Piercing Lights and no Falling Stars at all, which is kind of interesting, right? Because that means that in this metagame he preferred to deal a potential 4 instead of a potential 6 to 1 target, right? One could question that, if that will be better or not. And he also plays 3 Dravens for 4 cost in his main, which is not also something that many people do, but otherwise it's pretty more standard stuff. In the top 4 we have another Draven, but this one I'm a big fan of because it's essentially just exactly like my Annie deck that I play on stream, which focuses on Vexes and Ride the Wind combos and just really weird tricks to just win the game by doing that. But this one has access to the Draven, the 6-drop Draven, as the chosen champion unit, which allows you to do even more weird stuff with Ride the Wind. Now, this is so gonna be interesting in the future, because when you're gonna queue into a Draven on a tournament, you never know which version you will play, which makes it even more complicated to play against a Draven. And I don't think Draven is like a tier 0 deck, but it's kind of oppressive that he's gonna have like 3 different versions or even more that you will have to play around at the same time. It's gonna be very hard to do efficiently. And here, like, look, Vex might be very clunky because she needs to be on the battlefield to have an effect, so she's kind of like a slow character to play. You can always Ride the Wind from the base if you play her at the same time, right? But other than that, you would rather use the Ride the Wind when she's already in combat. But it's very cool deck to play, and I can guarantee you this person on this Draven Falco here was definitely winning games by just outplaying opponents, by the opponents not having a clue what's going on, because the Vex changes so much in the math, and also changes, basically acts like a counter spell in combat because it makes so many more spells basically unplayable when the costs go up by one energy and 1 power at the same time, while your cold shot becomes essentially just 1 power, right? So it's kind of crazy when you think about it, and cool to see that this kind of a deck also performs, even though it's another Draven. And talking about another Draven, here we have Gesualdi with a top 4 finish that plays another more standard Draven with the additional spinning axis, with the additional longsword to the spinning axis, hard bargain in the main, switcher in the main, 1 flash in the main. This is like all, I would say, just up to whatever your personal playstyle is. You can play almost any kind of iterations of Draven, they will all be effective. It's just about what you want to have in your deck when it comes to the toolbox, because purple essentially has almost everything available to them, right? You will always play Rebukes, but will you play Ride the Wind? Most likely. Will you play Switcheroo though? That's the question. Will you play it in main or not? Will you play the hard bargains in main or not? Do you have a flash or not? Most of the Dravens do not, but this one has it, so you have to play around that as well. It's kind of crazy. The locations here are a little bit different. I don't like the treasure hoard. Like, that's one of the things that I feel like doesn't really fit, because it will benefit your opponent so much more than you. And also Draven generates gold himself really efficiently, so I feel like it's like a win more, but also gives your opponents a chance to get more value out of it. So here we have the Obelisk of Power instead, which allows you to drop a Draven on turn 1, for example, which is kind of crazy. In the sideboard, you're gonna see a little bit more options with Vexes, which are coming in for sure with the mirror matches. Same goes for the Bryn here as a second copy with 1 in the main. Ferris Forerunners, I feel like when you play in a mirror or against any purple, like, this card just goes out. So you get the 2 copies out, and you get like 2 Vexes or a Bryn here and a Vex instead of it to the main, while in any other color those Ferris Forerunners go to 3 after the first match. Other than that, congrats to Gesualdi for the top 4. And let's go to the next deck. In the top 8, we're gonna find Ferraro with the Victor Innovator combo control list, which we also have seen in China very often. This one is just an iteration which is very consistent when it comes to what it's gonna draw, because all of the cards are in 3 copies. You will have the Jace and the Armory in 3 copies. You're gonna have Stupefy, Bellows Breath, Blood Money, Hidden Blade, Call the Weak, Honest Broker because you need more gold, Wages of Pain because you need more gold for that Jace, then Consult the Past, Drag Under, Imperial Decree, Singularity, and that's about it. Now, the locations are all supporting your plan as well. Void Gate allows you to change the breakpoints on Wages of Pain, for example, which is important, from 3 to 4. Then we have the Conservatory, because it will draw you cards in like almost all situations, unless you're gonna just flip into Armory, Jace, or Honest Broker, so otherwise you're drawing a card. Treasure Hoard is because the deck is power hungry, but also sometimes will allow you to fuel an additional gold gear token for the Jace if you really badly need it. Now, in other decks that I have like analyzed here in my videos, The Victor lists sometimes cut one console the pass because at some point it becomes too much. Not certain if 2 or 3 is the best choice, but I would say that even if you go with 3, it's not a terrible choice. And in the side, we're gonna find equipment hate with the salvage in 3 times. You're gonna find also a Renata, which allows your tokens to go ready. Now, I'm definitely seeing this being useful as a sideboard tech for the mirrors, for example, right? When you kind of need a little bit more oomph and speed. I'm not sure in which order matchups this is gonna be going in. I would have to think about it a little bit more. Hannes Dragon is a great choice as well because it's a hard removal with a body. So remember that when you play against this deck, you will probably side out removal, which then brings in a Hannes Dragon, and suddenly there's a problem because there's a 6 might unit that you don't have a removal for, right? Because you're not prepared to fight big units against this deck. And this card still does its job because it kills another unit. And you also have Rally the Troops, which I'm a very big fan of. And I was trying to do a more traditional victim myself with Rally the Troops, and it's a very, very good card. When you combo that with Armory, essentially 1-turn Armory with the Rally the Troops creates 6 might and draws you a card, which is kinda nuts. Gavasme is playing a Kaisa deck with updates from the mech department, so we have Ferrous Forerunners, Production Surge, Forecasters, and Gam Jammers in it as the mech package, and we don't play Time Warps in this version, most likely because the meta is overrun with Hard Bargain, so it's very hard to play the Time Warp unless you have 12 energy, which doesn't really happen often, right? And overall, the deck is also updated with the Piercing Lights. I don't see a Void Gate, which is very interesting to see in this Kaisa, specifically also with the Piercing Light included here because it changes the breakpoints so much. And the locations are Arena's Greatest, Obelisk of Power, which is very interesting to see, and Reverse Row. Now, I'm not certain why the Obelisk of Power is here exactly for. The biggest argument will be to use it when you're going second and just to play Kaisa on your first turn. But other than that, playing 2 drops, not sure. Would have to ask the person behind the deck, and I can't really do that right now. There's one in Cathian Rain in the main, and in the side we're gonna find the Singularity. Not too many surprises over here. Like the Cleaves are in the main while the Blood Rushes are in the side, so I would assume that the reason why the Blood Rushes are on the sideboard is to go up to 5, because why would you just side out Cleaves to getting Blood Rushes in? That's just very inefficient sideboarding. It's just essentially you don't exchange anything. The purpose of the card is going to be very similar, so I'm assuming that's just to get even more Cleaves essentially when you're attacking into the locations. Other than that, it's pretty standard. One surprising thing is the 2 copies of Darius and 3 copies of Ferrous Forerunners and not the other way around. I would be a little bit worried when it comes to playing Ferrous Forerunners in this metagame, because of so many players just playing Rebuke. And when you play a Ferrous Forerunner and someone plays Rebuke, you kinda lose the game. In the top 8, we're gonna find Delaguardia piloting Master Yi in a very interesting version, because I'm a big fan of few of the choices here, because those were the cards that I was calling out to be used in Master Yi before the decks even starting to pop out. So we're gonna see Carnivorous Snapvine over here and Action in the main with 3 copies. Big fan of this decision. But the deck revolves around essentially just rescuing those creatures over and over again. We have Zonia's Hourglass in 3 copies and Guardian Angel in 3 copies. So it's kind of like a El Presidente kind of deck, but it also plays some early game drops. So we have Lonely Porous here. We have the Herder, which draws you cards, right, whenever it moves. So there's no many ways of moving creatures over here. So just remember that. It's basically just here for drawing like 1 card, typically, right? Unless you're gonna leave a location. That's probably not gonna happen, but maybe. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward how it works. We also have the Trinity Force to get additional points when holding. And essentially, there's not really much to say about this deck. It's very straightforward. It just fights efficiently, fights more fair, and then just resists the units to be unfair. And Action is one of those cards that if you play against a deck that has equipment, will most likely put you ahead of the matchup, because you have so many copies of it in the main deck. So you're gonna be just packing so much heat when it comes to anti-equipment stuff in the Spiritforged metagame. When it comes to the locations, we have pretty standard stuff. So Dreaming Tree, because you're gonna have so many spells that you play on your own units. Vimo's Lair, obviously, because you benefit from it when you're playing Master Yi yourself. You also have the additional combo with the Snapvine, which allows you to have more control of what targets you will have, right, for the Snapvine. And we have the Obelisk of Power, not really surprising for a deck that plays a little bit higher on the curve. Now, in this, the problem of this deck is typically that the purple color will just completely fuck you over, and that's where Ruin Runner is very important. So I'm kind of surprised to see it only in 2 copies, because if you play against purple, you need to have it as soon as possible. Ideally, when you have 6 resources, you're instantly dropping it, right? So kind of surprised to see that it's only being in 2 copies here, but you cannot deny the results. The person did get to top 8 in a 340 people tournament, so it's an incredibly big achievement, and it shows to us that maybe Master Yi is not gonna be that dead in the new expansion. The last top 8 spot is gonna be Negri playing Draven, a more traditional one here. Like, there's not really too many surprises over here. We're gonna have the spinning axes, but we're gonna have the long swords in 2 copies. We're gonna have the removal in form of piercing lights in the main, which is a little bit more or less surprising, but when you play against a Draven, you have to assume they either have Falling Star or Piercing Lights, right? So it's kind of hard to play around it because you never know which one they have. But from the small surprise that this deck packs is a angle shot in the main. Now it allows you to be a little bit more efficient with your spinning axis to rescue it from the temporary sometimes, but it also allows you to play some tricks against your opponent because it can be used in both ways on you or your opponent, right? To detach something mid-combat, which allows you to just flip the boards if it's, for example, in a mirror match and the spinning axis of your opponents are gonna be thrown away from their character. We also have the Obelisk of Power over here, which probably can be used for the Kai'Sa or Draven on turn 1 if you're going first. I don't think you're gonna be ever using it going first yourself, because why would you want to go to up to 3? Doesn't really make much sense. Other than that, in the sideboard, we're gonna have more tricks. So we're gonna have Hard Bargain, we're gonna have Switcheroos, we're gonna have Angle Shot, additional copy, and 2 Vexes. No Bryn Hears. That's probably the most surprising from this deck list, is that there's literally not a single Bryn here in the entire deck, but there are Vexes, right? So there's like a little bit some form of counterplay towards opposing spells. But yeah, big congrats to Negri as well for being in the top 8. Let's go to the top 16 now. In the top 16, we have Draven Combo played by Gaetano Pippa, who played a very similar version to what won the entire event. There are some small differences here, because this Draven Combo doesn't play Falling Star, but plays Hard Bargain instead, plays 3 Overzealous Fan when the winner of the event was playing 2, that has a Tide Runner instead, for example, in the deck, and also plays 2 Bushwhacks instead of 1, which was being played by the winner. So very similar. Like very similar, same location, so this seems to be in the same way being built. And then in the sideboard, we have the Falling Star, we have additional Hard Bargains, a additional copy of Rebuke, actually yes, additional copy of Rebuke, 3 Vexes, which is probably the biggest difference here because between those 2 decks, because the other version was playing Bryn Hears by Gianluca Di Clemente over here, and it had some removal when it comes to the gears. Now here we have 1 Spinning X and Vexes. Now Vexes can be acting as kind of like a Bryn here, because during combat they essentially not allow your opponent to play any spells because they're gonna be so expensive. In the top 16, we also had 1 Teemo, which is I'm not an expert on Teemo, so I'm not gonna be like doubting any choices over here. I have no idea what I will be doing with this deck. I have never played a Teemo, although my close friend plays a Teemo deck and we played a little bit against each other. I don't really know the intricacies of this deck in and out. Piloted by Ombra. Big congrats on the top 16 with a Teemo deck. With some weird choices over here. By weird, I'm just saying that this is the new metagame, right? We have 2 Time Warps in the main, which probably could get some people like off guard because you don't expect it to be mained by a Teemo most likely. There's of course Mundo, Watchers over here. You have a 1 copy of Riptide Rex, Ember Monks, of course. The very interesting choice here is for me the Black Market Broker. When you play a card from face down, play a Gold Gear token Exhausted. I thought that this card is gonna be rather unenjoyable for the Teemos because it's gonna be so slow, right? You have to control the location, then you have to play the card from hidden, then you get a token that is actually tapped. So if you play that during your opponent's turn, you're gonna have it for your turn. So it's like, I don't know, it's one of those things that I would love to see in action to actually understand. And of course you have the update with the switcheroos. I think this card is just absolutely bonkers, and in a deck that can play it for one resource instead of power, that's even more broken. Inclusion also of rocket barrage, because just to have like an answer to a some form of equipment, or just destroy just a 4-mite unit in the base. It's pretty cool. There's also 2 bellows breath, which I'm gonna assume are here to help with the turn when you also play Thousand Tail Watcher, because it's kind of like a mini falling star and Thousand Tail Watcher, right? So that's pretty cool. And other than that, yeah, we're gonna take a look at the sideboard, and here I'm gonna have more questions than anything else. Like, there are copies of Rebuke, that's understandable. Another copy of Console of the Past, understandable. Fading Memories, understandable. Singularity, understandable. But there's 1 Guerrilla Warfare and 1 Downwell. The Downwell probably is against Victor, and I don't know if against anything else. Guerrilla Warfare, not sure which matchup this comes even in to recur the hidden cards. No clue, no idea. Anyway, congrats, big congrats for the Teemo for getting top 16 in a 340 people tournament. Big stuff. In the top 16, we're gonna find 2 Rek'Sais. This is the first one. It's a Immortal Phoenix version, which I am a big fan of, and I was thinking about actually playing this as one of my choices in Bologna. And we'll see, actually. I still don't know. It depends. But the idea of an Immortal Phoenix deck I already had in Origins, but it wasn't good enough. And with Rek'Sai over here, I feel like this can be played. Like, this can be really an efficient deck, even though it's a little bit casino-like. Like, you can high roll, you can low roll, and you feel bad, or you feel great. So there's also an interesting interaction that I'm definitely putting into another video as well. Immortal Phoenix, when you read the cards and you know the rules, should not work with Falling Star or Call of the Week, but Riftbound being Riftbound did implement changes in the comprehensive rules to make sure that Immortal Phoenix will trigger of Falling Star and Call of the Week. So yeah, that's one of the interactions that you kind of need to know when playing this deck or against this deck. Other than that, the inclusion of Seal of Rage makes absolute sense in this deck because there's so much power needed. It's actually insane. When you're gonna start thinking about like how many power cards you have here, like you need to play Seal of Rage, but you need to play even more than that. That's why we're gonna have locations that create gold. We have also the Soaring Scouts to create just more ramp because you need more power, and Honest Broker to create more gold. Like, that is just required. Other than that, it's pretty standard red stuff. You have Falling Stars, you have Ferrous Forerunners because they are so good. Although, again, I would have to think if I would like to have them in my main or in the sideboard, depending on how much purple do I predict is going to be played in an event that I'm attending to with this deck. So you could literally just put the maybe Brynhirs instead of here, or just change it to 3 Dariuses and 2 Ferrous Forerunners, and or like 3 Darius and 2 Brynhirs, and move those Ferrous Forerunners to the sideboard because of the purple color existing. But that's another topic. Other than that, the deck is really awesome. There are some really high rolls with Under Titan being revealed, which essentially breaks the game because you're gonna be able to just completely add more cards to your board. And when it comes to playing aggro yellow-red combo, I feel like the Immortal Phoenix road is just so much more efficient than playing Baited Hook, which revolves so much about you just hitting even more casino than this deck. So yeah, big fan of this Rek'Sai. Another slot in the top 16 was being taken by Draven, piloted by Vuono, and I'm not gonna sacrifice a lot of time talking about this deck because it just feels like almost every other Draven, apart from the fact that it has 2 Vexes in the main board, and that's about it. Also, full set of the Spinning Axes and Long Swords. Not surprised, it's very efficient. Yeah, so that's about it. It's just another Draven, which were 10 off in the entire top 16. Talking about more Dravens, another combo Draven over here in the top 16. So 3 decks so far with the Bushwhack Draven. I feel like it needs to be called Bushwhack Draven. Like, I know that even coming from other card games, like Miracle was a term that was being coined. But I feel like Bushwalker is just such a wacky card that it has to be in the name. Anyway, this is another version of it. I think it's, let me just check. I think it's exactly the version that we've seen in the top 16 as well. Yeah, this is a friend of the other guy for sure. It's different than the winner's deck because it doesn't play Falling Star, but it has all the key cards anyway, and it plays the Hard Bargain in the main over here and 2 Bushwalks where the winner played 1. So yeah, this deck is giga fun to play, by the way. So I know it's a Draven. I know it's a Draven. It's very unfortunate this has to be a Draven deck, although it could be played as an any deck, but one will have to think if it's worth. It's a consideration, I would say, but we'll probably would have to play more Hard Bargain in the main if that's the case. But just card draw is just so incredible in this type of deck. Then we have another Draven by Tresca, and again, we're gonna just breeze through here. This is just your standard stuff: Vexes and Burn Heroes in the sideboard, Switcheroo in the main, and 5 swords in the when it comes to equipment. So yeah, that's about it. No Burn here in the main. That's about it. Okay, let's go next. Another top 16 spot is being taken by the second Rek'Sai, which is also the Immortal Phoenix version. So we're gonna see standard stuff like the 3 Seal of Rage, 3 Phoenixes, the Honest Brokers, and the Soaring Scouts. The locations are very similar, although actually they are not similar. There's Arena Greatest as a different one than the other Rek'Sai, and Zone Warrens, while the Candlelight Cyclone, of course, is gonna be the main location of Rek'Sai decks. But what is interesting here is we have some odd choices that the other Rek'Sai didn't have. Like 3 times Forge of the Future is one of the interesting ones. It doesn't really do much by itself. It's a 2-drop that creates a gear and 1 recruit with 1 might. But then you can use this to kill it and shuffle 4 cards from trashes to recycle them. Now, one could think, why is this in the main? So one, it could actually affect opposing decks that are relying on graveyard, so like the winner, for example, of the entire event. But I'm also starting to think, like, are there any cards from our own deck, from Rek'Sai, that would like to get back into the deck? And I guess getting more signature spells would be nice, right? Drawing another Void Rush could always be useful. Immortal Phoenix should be in the graveyard anyway. But other than that, just I don't know, maybe I'm missing something here, but I feel like if you want to really recycle something from the trash, it's gonna be just the signature spell and maybe some removal, like Hidden Blades and Caldewick, because, for example, you might just use it on your own units as well. If you that really depends on the context. I definitely don't recommend using Hidden Blade on your own units and in this type of deck, even though you have some units that you can kill, like Soaring Scout or for the future Recruit itself, right? But then again, it's like very inefficient. We have also Sundisk as one of the one-offs in the deck, and the Longsword. Now Sundisk, I think it's honestly an incredible card. I just wait till it breaks the game, because being able to just play a next unit ready almost every time when you play Legion, right, it's incredible value. So this deck is just a little bit more aggressive than the other Rex that we've seen, because there's also less reliance on like uncovering cards. There are no Under Titans over here, but there's more removal. Like we have in addition to Falling Stars, we also have Void Seekers and Vengeance, right? So yeah, this one is pretty different from the other Rek'Sai. Even though they are the same archetype, they definitely play in a different play style, even though they share the similarities. In the sideboard though, we have very similar stuff, although two Dariuses in the side when there's only one in the main seems like an odd choice, but hey, I didn't play the deck that much to actually know if this is better than not than the other version. And in the last spot of the top 16, we have another Draven. Yip yip hooray! 10 Dravens overall, 3 of them were combo, 7 were not, and this one is another non-combo, just normal Draven stuff. Bring here in the main, 4 axes in the main, cleaves instead of blood rushes, and then in the sideboard we have okay, Poros in the side, a hard bargain, 1 rebuke, 1 switcheroo. Yeah, all standard stuff. Not really a point in discussing much of this. Now let's talk about the tournament in a big picture kind of way. And remember, this is the first Spiritforged event in Europe that was also played for the first time in a best of 3. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't expect a lot of innovation in this tournament, because ahead of Bologna, I don't think people would like to play play with something that maybe they're hiding and they're keeping close to their chest before Bologna. But still, we have seen an updated version of the Chinese Draven, the combo Draven that is taking the entire event, which is very nice to see, although it is disappointing to see 10 Dravens in the overall top 16. Now, when it comes to the entire metagame, 24% was Dravens, 12 was Kai'Sa, 12 Irelia. Not a single Irelia went into the top 16. That is a very interesting statistic. So 42 players and none of them was able to convert into the top 16 cut, which begs the question what is happening here, because Irelia is definitely going to stay at a top 3 pick deck and is being perceived by many players as one of the best, if not the best overall deck in the entire format. And then we have Master Yi with a really surprising share of 10%. Victor with smaller share than Yi, 9.4%. This is why I'm so surprised. I was actually thinking, because this tournament was allowed to play proxies, right? People had access to any cards they wanted because they could proxy whatever they want. And somehow we're ending up with more Yis than anything else that we're gonna have in the next lines. That's very, very, very interesting. Annie is at 5.6%, so still a lot of Annie believers, which I am one of them. I feel like Annie can still be a pretty powerful deck in this upcoming metagame. Ezreal 5.3%, so 18 players, and I feel like here I don't think Ezreal is very good. I really don't think so. It's kind of a very similar kind of deck like the winning Draven list, which is basically just like a graveyard removal, you know, huge amount of card draw type of deck, and Ezreal doesn't have access to red, which brings a lot of possibilities that are additional win conditions, right? And just efficient cards, and the blue and the Ezreal draw is just so clunky to get. Sivir with a surprising, actually, only 13 players picked it up, but at the same time probably Sivir is one of the hardest decks to play efficiently, so maybe that's one of the reasons. But again, another Raza deck essentially. Then we have Lucian with only 9 players chose it, which this one is very surprising, because I feel like it's one of those decks that probably would have a lot of fans because it's so efficient with just attacking locations. It just feels like a very cool deck to play when you're able to just gun your opponents down so fast. We have 8 players showing up with Rek'Sai, 2 of them converting to top 16. So something's here, guys. Something's here. This Rek'Sai might be actually better than a lot of people think, and I was one of them. I was thinking that the deck might be great, but then I played a little bit with it and I was just like kind of disappointed, and now I'm kind of back on the track as well. Only 6 people chose to play it. I feel like might be also because there were so many Dravens, and yeah, we'll see. Darius with 6, very surprising. I am not certain why it was even picked at all, but again, so many people in the comments are letting me know that I'm an idiot by thinking that Darius is not a good contender in the upcoming metagame. I'm yet to be convinced. We have 6 Leonas, absent totally 4 Misfortunes. That's a very surprising one as well. They share the colors with Sivir, but not many players actually chose to play MF, even though I feel like Aurora could be still a good choice even in this metagame. Yasuo with 4 players, Set with 3. They definitely didn't do well. Like, Set is just being absolutely dumpstered in this metagame, and it's rough to play Set. If you wanted to play Set, you should be playing Fiora, and Fiora was also played by 3 players, but she definitely did better, showing up I think in the top 64, but didn't do very well overall. And then we have 3 players choosing Teemo, and one of them reaching top 16. A very specialist deck, and that's probably gonna keep this way for the foreseeable future. I don't think it's gonna be a meta game deck like at all, because it's so complicated to play, so it's always gonna be on the lower numbers. And now let's talk about the fact that this was a first best of 3 Spiritforged event in Europe, and yet it wasn't really that different from the Chinese best of 1 tournaments. And I have seen so many people downplaying the best of 1 tournaments like they are not worth anything analyzing or anything. There's so many comments under my Chinese reports because people just, I don't know, they feel like if it's a best of 1, it doesn't matter. I do think that there's a big difference when it comes to results that are possible between a best of 1 and a best of 3, and I would absolutely hate if our format was best of 1, but at the same time I'm not disregarding any of the decks coming from the best of one, because there's always something there to think about. When you're testing your main like best of one, then you start thinking about the best of three and how to get improvements in the best of three format. But still, you start with the best of one anyway. So I feel like you have to keep a close eye on what's happening in Chinese region. The biggest factor when it comes to like why China might not be like, you know, a fully a full region taking in like fully serious by the rest of the world is because their deck building is not the best. Is like, feels like they don't really innovate that much as we are in Europe and in NA. But at the same time, here in this tournament, it is not yet seen. And I feel like that probably the reason I said before, it's that we are gonna have the upcoming biggest tournament with over 1.6k players in Bologna next month, and I'm gonna be going there as well, so hope to see you guys there. And you know, if you see me, just say hi. Always happy to talk with anyone who approaches. But overall, I feel like it's great to see the first Spiritforged event in Europe, and so many people are actually looking into playing Riftbound. Like, just awesome. Anyway, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what did you think about the top 16 from this event, and see you guys in the next video.